Welcome to the Global WarWatch Network. To track the mechanics of international conflict as they unfold, subscribe to the channel. I'm joined by my co-host, and today we are analyzing the structural forces behind the sudden halt in the Middle East. American B-52 bombers were physically in the air, closing in on Iranian targets, before they were recalled mid-flight. The trigger for this reversal was an 11th-hour agreement concerning the world's most critical energy chokepoint, the Strait of Hormuz. Instead of strikes, the region has entered a 2-week, double-sided ceasefire. Brokered by Pakistan through direct conversations with Iran's supreme leader, the pause is conditional on the immediate and safe reopening of the strait. The official halt to the bombing campaign came roughly 90 minutes before the operational deadline for the strikes to hit, narrowly avoiding a massive escalation. Our analysis today evaluates the structural terms of this pause. We will dissect the 10-point proposal currently on the table, the logistical reality of navigating the strait, and the fragmented state of regional military command. While the headlines focus on the political victory of a ceasefire, the actual stability of the region depends on severe logistical constraints and broken command realities that exist far away from the negotiating table. The U.S. strategy relied on hard power brinkmanship. By putting active bomber wings in the sky with a ticking clock, Washington attempted to force the strait open without allowing Tehran room to stall. Within the White House, the strategy faced internal pressure. Advisors like Jared Kushner lobbied the president to accept the diplomatic off-ramp provided by Pakistani mediation. Vice President J.D. Vance joined this faction, favoring a negotiated settlement to stabilize energy markets over the immediate military degradation of Iranian infrastructure. This internal U.S. consensus developed in direct opposition to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who lobbied Washington to reject the ceasefire and proceed with strikes. Iran's counter-strategy utilized asymmetric economic leverage. By closing the Strait of Hormuz, they effectively held global oil supplies hostage, using the threat of a synchronized energy crisis to halt the American bombers. This model shows the shift in the diplomatic framework. Iran negotiated the original 15-point U.S. proposal down to a 10-point counteroffer. The threat of an oil shortage gave Iran the leverage required to force a pause, bringing their 10 terms to the center of discussion. Domestically, Iranian state media is framing the situation as a military victory, characterizing the withdrawal of the B-52s as a forced American retreat. Both sides are claiming success through different metrics. The U.S. views the pause as a win for regional stability, while Iran views it as a successful use of economic blackmail to deter a direct military strike. This infographic summarizes the core of Iran's proposal. The leading demands are the lifting of all U.S. sanctions, a permanent end to the war, and absolute guarantees Iran won't face future attacks. Point 3 specifically requires an end to Israeli military operations in Lebanon, a demand that links the Maritime ceasefire to the broader regional conflict. A close reading of the text regarding the cessation of regional fighting reveals a significant logical inconsistency. Iran demands that attacks on its allies, such as Hezbollah, must stop. However, the proposal contains no provision to halt the offensive operations carried out by those same proxies against Israel. Point 10 addresses the financial aftermath. Iran proposes using collected transit fees for domestic reconstruction rather than paying war reparations to the international community. This represents an attempt to turn the maritime industry into a direct funding source for the rebuilding of Iranian infrastructure. The 10-point plan functions as a maximalist anchoring strategy. By putting forward extreme demands, Tehran aims to force concessions on more moderate strategic goals, such as maintaining its domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. This model tracks Point 7, the introduction of a $2 million transit fee for every commercial vessel entering the strait. Point 8 proposes splitting these revenues 50-50 with Oman, creating a shared financial interest. This demand is a non-starter. The global shipping industry cannot absorb a $2 million surcharge per ship without triggering a collapse in market margins. Beyond the cost, accepting this point would establish a state-sponsored protection fee model for access to international waters. If the world accepts this toll, nations like Denmark or Spain or the UK could legally justify taxing straits along their own coastlines. This symbol demand eradicates 2 centuries of established freedom of navigation laws, returning the world to a period where nations charged for safe passage. Negotiators likely understand the toll will be rejected. Its presence shifts the conversation, distracting from other strategic demands, like the future of Iran's ballistic missile range and inventory. Shifting from the political text to the physical environment, we must evaluate the phrase technical limitations included in the Iranian proposal. This bathymetric map illustrates those limitations. Iran has deployed active sea mines across the strait, effectively blocking the standard shipping lanes. The drop in volume is severe. Pre-war, over 100 ships transited daily. Currently, throughput has slowed to 3 ships per day, creating a massive logistical backlog of tankers waiting for safe entry. This blockage represents an existential threat to energy security in major Asian and European markets, where some nations are now facing imminent domestic oil shortages. To manage this, Iran has proposed a safe route system where tankers must navigate a restricted, narrow lane under direct coordination of the Iranian armed forces. Funneling a massive queue of tankers into a single, narrow channel drastically increases traffic density and the risk of collisions in a heavily congested waterway. Reopening the strait diplomatically does not solve the physical blockage. It merely converts a political standoff into a severe, chronic logistical crisis. Even with a signed agreement, the ceasefire faces a structural threat from within, the independence of Iran's various military factions. Mere minutes after the U.S. president announced the ceasefire, Iranian missiles were launched toward Tel Aviv. This indicates a broken chain of command. Targeted assassinations of high-level military leaders have severed the link between the diplomatic leadership in Tehran and the operators on the ground. Deprived of top-tier coordination, proxy groups like Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq operate with high levels of autonomy, independent of official state policy. This independence was visible earlier in the week when Kataib Hezbollah released a kidnapped U.S. journalist prior to the formal deal, a move that happened outside the official diplomatic channel. A diplomatic agreement signed by a civilian government provides no guarantee of compliance from decentralized, autonomous missile operators who may not be receiving or following orders from the center. Pulling back to the macro view, the immediate threat of a U.S. bombing campaign has been delayed. However, the weight of the conflict has now shifted entirely to the Middle East nodes and the unpredictable actions of regional proxy forces. This ceasefire is fragile because it resolves none of the underlying structural conflicts driving the war. Stopping the B-52s does not clear the minefields in the strait, nor does it address the massive logistical paralysis of the global oil supply. The threat of rogue actions by fragmented militias remains constant, as these groups operate outside the boundaries of international treaties. Given the maritime tolls and the broken chain of command, do you believe this 10-point plan is a workable basis for peace? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. To continue following our in-depth analysis of global geopolitics, like the video and subscribe to the Global WarWatch Network. Stability in the region relies on the unyielding realities of physical geography and a functional military chain of command, realities that exist independent of any political signature.